The restaurant smelled like scorched butter and lemon cleanser, the kind of place that wanted to feel expensive without quite managing it. Candles burned too low, wax pooling in pale ridges along the table edge. The plates were gone when I stepped inside. Not stacked. Not waiting. Gone. Only the rings from wine glasses remained, damp circles slowly darkening the linen. I stood there with my coat still on, the door closing softly behind me, that quiet after money spent settling into my chest. My father leaned back in his chair, fingers hooked together over his belt, satisfied in the way men get when the night has already given them what they came for. He worked in commercial real estate. Deals, lunches, patience. He liked to say silence was a skill. Tonight, his silence carried a smile. My mother looked up second, arranging her napkin with precise care, as if the table needed one last correction. She taught elementary school. Spent her days talking about fairness. At home she preferred harmony over truth. My sister sat beside her, phone face down, mouth curved just enough to show she'd been waiting. I felt it then, that familiar role clicking into place. I've been the one who always pays for as long as I can remember. Not just money. Time. Flexibility. Forgiveness. The one who arrives last because she rearranges her life around everyone else first. My father's voice landed lightly like a joke we'd all rehearsed. My sister laughed right on cue. The sound skimmed the table sharp and small. Someone at the next table coughed. Silverware clinked. Outside, a bus sighed at the curb. I smiled back, reflex more than choice, and slid into the empty chair. The leather was still warm from my mother's coat. A server hovered nearby, polite and careful, eyes flicking between us. I caught the faint smell of charcoal from the kitchen, something sweet burning underneath. My stomach tightened, hollow in a way that had nothing to do with hunger. There was a time when dinners meant something else. I remember being 8, sitting in a booth with cracked vinyl, my feet swinging, my father tearing his bread in half and sliding the larger piece onto my plate without looking at me. A small kindness. Automatic. It's strange how memories like that drift in uninvited, quiet as dust, when you're trying to understand who someone has become. My mother asked about traffic. My sister asked if I'd finally changed jobs yet. Questions designed to fill space, not to hear answers. I answered anyway. That's another habit. When the check didn't come, when no one reached for a wallet, the air shifted. Expectation has a weight to it. It pressed against my shoulders, familiar as gravity. I watched my father's smile linger, watched my sister's eyes flick toward my bag. I thought about the overtime I'd worked that week, the envelope of bills on my kitchen counter, the way my name always ended up last on the list of needs. I stood and walked toward the host stand. The floor was cool through the thin soles of my shoes. I asked for the manager, my voice steady, surprised at how calm it sounded. Behind me, laughter faltered. A chair scraped. I didn't turn around. The manager arrived, a woman with tired eyes and a kind mouth. I explained quietly. Not accusing. Just clear. As she nodded, something loosened in my chest, not relief exactly, more like recognition. I was still the one who always pays, but tonight I was choosing how. When I went back to the table, the candles had burned lower. The light had changed. Shadows stretched longer across familiar faces. No one spoke at first. I sat down, folded my hands and waited, listening to my own breathing, to the soft scrape of dry leaves against the window outside. The manager didn't come back right away. Time stretched in the space she left behind, thin and exposed. My father cleared his throat, a sound he used in boardrooms when someone else had spoken too long. My mother reached for her water, then stopped, fingers hovering as if unsure whether she was allowed. My sister picked up her phone again, tapping the screen without looking at it, the glow briefly lighting her face in a way that made her seem younger, less certain. I've learned that families don't announce their patterns. They let you live inside them until you forget there are other ways to stand. I was the one who always pays. The one who smooths things over. The one who gets called practical when what they mean is convenient. The waiter passed, carrying a tray heavy with desserts meant for other tables. Warm sugar drifted through the air, mixing with the sharper scent of cleaning spray. Somewhere in the back, a pan clanged. The sound echoed, metallic and final. My father leaned closer, his voice low, controlled. He said my name the way he used to when I was a teenager and came home late. Half warning, half performance. I thought about the way he still mailed birthday cards without messages inside. About how my mother called every Sunday but never asked how I slept. About my sister borrowing my clothes and never returning them, claiming they'd been lost in the wash. Small things. Easy to dismiss. They gathered anyway. A memory surfaced unasked. Me at 22 standing in a bank office that smelled like stale coffee, signing papers I didn't fully understand because my father said it would help build credit. His hand on my shoulder then heavy and proud. I remembered the pen slipping slightly in my grip, the sound of the signature too loud in the quiet room. I hadn't known what I was agreeing to. I just knew I was supposed to. The manager returned with a folded receipt and a calm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He spoke to my father first. His posture stiffened, then softened into something practiced. My mother's face flushed, pink rising along her neck. My sister laughed again, but this time it landed wrong, brittle like glass tapped too hard. Voices rose. Not shouting. Controlled. Polite enough to be dangerous. My father gestured toward me, palm open as if presenting evidence. My mother nodded, lips pressed together. I felt myself shrinking and expanding at the same time, aware of every sound. The hum of the lights, the scrape of a chair, my own breath catching. That label echoed quietly in my head. The one who always pays. I'd worn it like armor, like proof I was useful, needed. Watching them now, I saw how easily usefulness turned into entitlement. The manager listened, then repeated herself, slower this time. Palsy. Timing. Responsibility. Words that held their shape no matter who tried to bend them. My father's smile faltered. My sister's phone went dark. The room felt colder, though nothing had changed. I looked down at the tablecloth, at the wine rings bleeding into the fabric, impossible to erase completely. I thought about all the times I'd stayed silent because it felt easier. Because silence had been taught as loyalty. When the manager left again, my mother finally met my eyes. There was something like apology there, quickly buried. She reached for my hand, then pulled back, smoothing the table instead. Outside, a car door slammed. Laughter drifted in from the street, unconnected to us. I sat still, heart steady but heavy, understanding something without fully naming it yet. Patterns don't break all at once. They crack first, quietly, along lines you've traced your whole life. The argument didn't follow us out of the restaurant. It stayed behind, suspended in the warm air and candle smoke, polite enough not to draw attention. Outside, the night felt thinner. Cool. The kind of cold that makes you aware of your skin. Streetlights cast long, uneven shadows across the sidewalk, stretching our bodies into shapes that didn't quite match who we were. My father walked ahead, keys already in his hand, the metal clinking softly with each step. That sound used to mean we were leaving somewhere together. Now it sounded like distance. My mother followed him, coat pulled tight, her heels clicking in quick, nervous beats. My sister lagged behind with me, silent for once, scrolling without really seeing. I breathed in exhaust and damp pavement. Somewhere nearby, a dumpster lid slammed shut. The city kept moving. I felt oddly suspended, like I'd stepped out of a current I'd been floating in my entire life. On the drive home, no one spoke. The radio stayed off. My father drummed his fingers against the steering wheel, a habit he had when he wanted to say something sharp but was choosing restraint. My mother stared out the window, watching storefronts blur into light. My sister sighed once, dramatically, then went still. I remembered another car ride, years earlier, my head pressed against the window as rain streaked the glass. My father telling me I was mature for my age. My mother agreeing. I'd felt proud then. Tozen. I didn't know maturity was just another word for being easy to lean on. When we reached my apartment building, my father didn't ask if I wanted to come inside. He just slowed, letting me out like a passenger, not family. The door closed with a dull thud. Their car pulled away, taillights bleeding red into the dark. Inside, my apartment smelled faintly of cold coffee and laundry detergent. A single lamp cast a weak yellow pool across the floor. I set my bag down and leaned against the door, listening to my own breathing until it evened out. That quiet felt louder than the restaurant ever had. I sat at the small kitchen table and opened a drawer I rarely used. Old envelopes lay stacked inside, corners bent, addresses faded. Bills I'd paid without question. Statements I'd skimmed and filed away. I don't know what made me look at them then. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe something had finally shifted enough to let curiosity through. As I sorted through the papers, details surfaced. Amounts. Dates. My name appearing again and again where I hadn't remembered putting it. My father's handwriting in the margins. Notes meant to reassure, not explain. My chest tightened, not with panic but with clarity beginning to form, slow and unwelcome. A memory drifted in, my mother at the dining table years ago, sunlight slanting across her hands as she asked me to help, just this once. My sister nearby chewing gum, bored. I'd nodded. Of course I had. I was the one who always pays. The realization didn't hit like a wave. It seeped in cold and steady. This wasn't one dinner. It wasn't even a pattern I'd misunderstood. It was a system that worked because I never questioned it. Because being reliable had felt like love. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister, light and dismissive, already reframing the night as a misunderstanding. I set the phone face down. Outside someone laughed. Somewhere above me water rushed through pipes. I gathered the papers into a neat stack and slid them back into the drawer, my hands steady. I wasn't ready to confront anyone yet. I wasn't ready to name everything I'd seen. But something had settled into place. I stood and turned off the lamp. In the dark, my reflection in the window looked older, sharper around the edges. I didn't feel strong. Not yet. Just awake. Patterns don't shatter when you notice them. They wait. And so did I. Morning arrived pale and quiet, the light outside my window diluted by a thin layer of fog. I made coffee and let it go cold on the counter, standing there in my socks, listening to the building wake up around me. Pipes knocked. A door closed somewhere down the hall. Ordinary sounds, grounding in a way I hadn't expected. I laid the envelopes out again, this time in daylight. The paper smelled faintly of dust and old ink. Numbers lined up too neatly to ignore now. Transfers. Overlaps. My name anchoring things that had never been mine to carry alone. There was a calm in seeing it clearly, a strange relief in knowing I hadn't imagined the weight I'd been living under. The manager from the restaurant emailed me mid-morning. A simple message. Professional. Kind. She said she hoped I was okay. That not all families raised their voices when they crossed lines. Some just smiled and waited. I stared at that sentence longer than I needed to. Support doesn't always arrive wrapped in history. Sometimes it shows up exactly when you need it, says what no one else will. By afternoon my phone began to fill. My mother's name. My sister's. A group message titled with our last name, as if unity could be summoned with punctuation. The tone shifted quickly, confusion turning to irritation, irritation sharpening into accusation. I read without responding, breathing slow, feeling something steady form beneath the hurt. When I finally answered, it was measured. I attached copies of the statements. I wrote plainly. No metaphors. No apologies. I explained what I'd seen, what I wouldn't do anymore. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. The response came fast and loud, even through text. Denial. Jokes. Then anger. My father called, his voice tight, controlled, unraveling at the edges. My sister chimed in, theatrical as ever. My mother stayed quiet longest, which hurt more than the rest. Silence has always been her sharpest tool. I asked them to meet me that evening. Public. Neutral. The same restaurant. I didn't frame it as a confrontation. Just a conversation. I knew what it would become anyway. The hostess recognized me. So did the manager. She gave a small nod, nothing more. We sat at the same table. The smell of charcoal drifted in again, mixed with citrus cleaner. The candles were new this time, flames steady. I spoke calmly. Laid everything out. Patterns. Expectations. The role I'd been playing without consent. The one who always pays. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Around us, forks paused midair. Someone laughed too loudly at another table. My father's face hardened, then cracked. My sister scoffed until there was nowhere left to hide behind humor. My mother finally cried, quietly, as if grief could absolve participation. That was the breaking point, not shouting but exposure. Their smiles vanished not all at once but layer by layer, until there was nothing left to perform with. I paid for my own coffee. Said, put on my coat. No one stopped me. Outside, dusk settled in soft blue layers. The air smelled like rain coming. I walked home slowly, feeling the city move around me instead of through me. For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for smoothing the edges of anyone else's discomfort. If you've ever been the one who always pays, you know how heavy usefulness can feel when it's mistaken for love. Some families don't raise voices. They raise expectations. At home, I washed my cup and set it upside down to dry. The apartment felt different. Not empty. Clear. I sat by the window and watched the last of the light fade, breathing evenly, letting the quiet settle where guilt used to live. I wasn't cutting anyone off. I wasn't making declarations. I was just choosing myself finally without needing permission. Some roles end without apology.